We spend so much time, thinking about stories, right? The ones that really get to us, the ones we can't stop thinking about.
Yeah.
But have you ever like come across a story and you're just like, wait a minute, does this story like know it's a story?
Hmm.
It's kind of like that feeling, right? It might seem kind of like a niche thing, right? Like we're getting really into the weeds of how stories work.
Yeah.
But this idea, this metafiction thing,
Uh-huh.
it's actually like more common than you think. And it's really fascinating when you start to see it.
It really is, yeah.
So that's what we're going to dive into today.
Awesome.
We're going to unpack this whole metafiction thing. Like, what is it really? Where does this whole like self-aware storytelling come from? And like, why should we even care?
Right.
And, you sent us this really interesting stuff from Dr. Rathod.
Yeah.
So we're going to be using his insights to kind of guide us through all this.
Perfect.
So to start us off, could you maybe just like break down what metafiction actually is? Like in simple terms?
Yeah. So when you hear metafiction, right, your brain might go straight to like super academic essays and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But honestly, at its core, it's a pretty straightforward idea.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's about those moments in a book, a movie, a play, whatever, where the story kind of like pulls back the curtain a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it winks at you and is like, hey,
Wow.
we both know this is all made up, right?
Haha, I love that. Like it's in on the joke.
Exactly. It's self-aware. It knows it's not real, and it's not trying to hide that from you.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
But like this idea of stories being self-aware,
Right.
it's not like brand new, right? Like this isn't something writers just came up with yesterday.
No, not at all. Dr. Rathod points this out really well. Like, even though the term metafiction is pretty recent from like the 1970s,
Oh, wow.
the techniques and just the whole idea of self-awareness and stories has
Yeah.
been around for ages. Like, we're talking centuries.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's super interesting to trace how it's shown up in different ways throughout history.
Okay, so let's go way back then. Like Dr. Rathod mentions Homer's Odyssey,
Yeah.
which is like this epic ancient Greek poem.
Right.
How does something like that even hint at metafiction?
Well, the cool thing is that some of the characters, like especially Odysseus himself when he's telling everyone about his crazy adventures,
Oh, yeah.
it's like he's shaping his own story for the people listening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Storytelling is like a huge part of the Odyssey. And you get this feeling that the characters understand how stories work.
Mm.
They know how to make them impactful, how to use tricks and techniques. They almost get that they're part of this bigger tradition of storytelling.
So it's like they're storytellers inside the story itself.
Exactly.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've got the Odyssey way back then.
Yeah.
And then moving forward a bit, Dr. Rathod brings up Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
Yeah.
What's the metafiction connection there?
So the main thing with Canterbury Tales is the framing narrative.
Okay.
You've got this whole group of pilgrims from all walks of life, right? And their whole journey is basically a reason for them to tell each other stories.
I see.
So it's not just about the stories themselves, but also about who's telling them and why. What are their motivations? How do the stories reflect their personalities?
Right.
It really highlights that the whole collection is carefully constructed.
Yeah.
You know?
Like it's deliberate. It's not just random stories thrown together.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've got these early examples, like little breadcrumbs leading us towards metafiction. But then Dr. Rathod talks about Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes as like a major turning point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Don Quixote is a total game changer. In the second part of the book, something wild happens.
Oh.
The characters actually find out they were in the first part. Like, they've read about themselves.
Whoa, wait, what? They know they're fictional characters?
Yeah, Cervantes is so clever. He's messing with this whole idea of fictional characters interacting with their own story.
That's so meta.
It was a huge deal back then.
Yeah.
Like, totally groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It showed how stories are made up and changed how people thought about authors and readers and the whole thing.
That is mind-blowing for the 17th century. Like, seriously, they're breaking the fourth wall way before Deadpool made it cool.
Uh-huh. Right? It's like they're stepping out of the book and into the reader's world.
Amazing. Okay, so then we move on to Tristram Shandy by Lawrence Sterne in the 18th century. Dr. Rathod calls this a really important step toward modern metafiction. What makes it so special?
Oh, man. Tristram Shandy is just so weird and wonderful in the best way.
Okay.
The narrator is constantly interrupting the story, not just with like random thoughts, but like he talks directly to the reader. He talks about writing the book, how hard it is to structure a narrative, even like the way the book looks.
What?
Yeah, Sterne was playing with the whole idea of form, you know. He's constantly reminding you that you're reading something that was made very intentionally.
So it's like he's acknowledging the reader's presence.
Totally. It's like he's having a conversation with you. And it feels surprisingly modern. you know? Like, he gets how readers think.
I can see that. Okay, so Stern's like messing with the form of the novel itself. But then we get to the 19th century, and Dr. Rathod talks about the rise of realism.
Right.
So how did this like more realistic style of storytelling affect metafiction?
Well, the main thing in the 19th century was all about creating stories that felt real, you know?
Yeah, like believable characters and settings.
Exactly. They wanted you to get lost in the story and forget you were even reading fiction.
Hmm.
But even then, as Dr. Rathod points out, there were still some writers playing with the boundaries a little bit.
Sneaking in those little metafictional moments.
Yeah, like a little wink here and there.
Like in the Scarlet Letter, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
in the Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne has this preface where he pretends he found the story.
Oh, right.
Like it was this old manuscript in a custom house.
So he's blurring the lines between fiction and reality.
Exactly. He's adding this layer of self-awareness by making you question where the story came from.
So even though they were all about realism back then, there were still these little hints that it was all a story. But it seems like the 20th century is when metafiction really explodes, especially with postmodernism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Dr. Rathod makes a great point about postmodernism.
Hmm.
You know, it's all about questioning big narratives,
Yeah.
embracing different perspectives, fragmentation, all that.
Uh-huh.
It was the perfect environment for metafiction to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Writers were already questioning everything, so why not question storytelling itself?
So it's like metafiction was just waiting to happen.
Kinda.
Yeah.
And even before postmodernism fully took over, you had modernist writers like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf.
Right.
They were already pushing the boundaries of storytelling.
In what ways?
Well, their focus was often on, like, inner thoughts and feelings and stuff.
Mm.
But in books like Ulysses by Joyce and in Woolf's novels, there are moments where the story reflects on itself.
Hmm.
You know, like the narrator will comment on how hard it is to write or capture reality with words.
So they're already thinking about the process of writing.
Exactly. And that definitely paved the way for the more direct metafiction that came later.
Okay, so then we hit the mid-20th century, the 60s and 70s, which Dr. Rathod calls like a golden age for metafiction.
Oh, yeah?
He highlights Jorge Luis Borges as a key figure.
For sure.
For those who might not be familiar with Borges, what makes him so important for metafiction?
Borges is like the OG metafiction master. His short stories are just brilliant.
In what way?
He plays with reality and fiction in these really mind-bending ways. Like in stories like Tlen Ukbar, Orbis Tertius, or Pierre Menard, author of the Quixote. He makes you question what's real and what's imagined. The lines get so blurred, it's crazy.
Sounds trippy.
It is. He's not just telling stories. He's exploring what stories can do, how they shape our reality.
So it's metafiction on another level.
Totally.
Wow. Okay, so then there's Vladimir Nabokov and Pale Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Rathod mentions its unique structure. How does that play into the metafiction?
So Pale Fire is presented as this poem, 999 lines. But then there are all these footnotes and a commentary by this guy who claims to be an expert on the poem. But his notes, they kind of go off the rails. They turn into this whole other story, which is probably not even true.
Oh, wow.
Nabokov is brilliant. He's making you question who to trust and what to believe. Is the poem the real story, or is it the crazy commentary?
That's so clever. Like he's messing with your head on purpose.
Right. It makes you think about how much power a narrator has and how we interpret stories.
I like it. Okay, so then there's John Barth and Lost in the Funhouse, especially that title story.
Yeah.
What's the metafictional angle there?
So in Lost in the Funhouse, the main character knows he's in a story.
No way.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
The story keeps breaking down. Like the narrator will just straight up talk about plot and character development.
So meta.
Right? It's super playful and makes you really aware that you're reading a constructed thing.
Like it's breaking the fourth wall, but with style.
Exactly.
Awesome. So by this point, metafiction is like out in the open, right? It's not subtle anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more overt.
Okay, then we get to the late 20th century, and Dr. Rathod argues that metafiction is thriving. He mentions Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler.
Oh yeah, that one's a classic. Even the premise itself is super meta.
Oh, how so?
The book starts with you, the reader, trying to read a book called If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler.
Okay.
But every time you start a chapter, it's a full start. It's a different story that never gets finished.
What?
Yeah, Calvino's basically making the whole act of reading the story.
That is so meta.
Right? It's like he's capturing that feeling of getting frustrated when a book doesn't go the way you expect.
I love it. Okay, and Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children also gets mentioned. How is that metafictional?
So in Midnight's Children, Rushdie has this narrator, Salim Sinai, who's super unreliable.
Unreliable? How so?
He's constantly talking to the reader, admitting that he might not be remembering things correctly. He mixes up personal stories with historical events, myths, fantasies. It's all blended together.
Wow, so he's playing with memory and truth.
Exactly.
Okay.
He's making you question the whole idea of a single objective truth.
And then there's Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace.
Oh, yeah, that one's a beast.
How does that fit into our understanding of metafiction?
Infinite Jest is like metafiction on steroids. It's huge and complex and all over the place.
Okay.
You've got this fragmented story, hundreds of footnotes that sometimes take over the whole page digressions, subplots that go nowhere. It's overwhelming.
Sounds intense.
It is. Wallace isn't just telling a story. He's exploring what it means to tell a story in this age of information overload. He's making you work for it, making you question how we make sense of the world through stories.
So these late 20th century writers, they really took metafiction to a whole other level.
For sure. They were fearless.
Yeah, and Dr. Rathod brings us into the 21st century too, showing that metafiction is still alive and well.
Oh yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's constantly evolving.
How so?
Well, he mentions Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad.
Uh-huh.
And she does things like having a whole chapter as a PowerPoint presentation.
Whoa, wait, what? A PowerPoint?
It's wild. She's playing with form and making you think about how stories are presented.
That's so creative.
It is. Contemporary writers are always pushing the boundaries.
What about authors like George Saunders and Zadie Smith?
They use metafiction in cool ways, too.
Oh, how so?
Well, Saunders is known for his satire, but he also brings in metafictional elements, like in Lincoln in the Bardo.
Okay.
He uses all these different voices, some of them like ghosts, and it's clear that he's very aware of how the story is being constructed.
Interesting.
And Zadie Smith in NW, she plays with structure a lot, switching perspective styles. It makes you think about how different voices shape a story.
So they're using metafiction to enhance their themes.
Exactly. It's not just a gimmick. It's a tool.
I see. Okay, so we've seen how this self-awareness in stories keeps popping up.
Yeah.
And Dr. Rathod points out that the term metafiction itself comes from the 1970s.
Right. It was coined by William H. Gass.
So even though the techniques have been around forever, the label is pretty new.
Exactly. Gass gave us a way to talk about this kind of writing, and it's become this recognized category.
Cool. So to sum it all up, it sounds like metafiction, as Dr. Rathod explains, is this really powerful way for authors to mess with the relationship between fiction and reality.
Yeah, it's not just about the story itself, but how it's told and how we as readers experience it.
And by pointing out that the stories made up metafiction makes us think more critically about how stories work.
Totally. It makes us question who's telling the story, why they're telling it, and how we're interpreting it.
So it's not just for like literary scholars and stuff.
No way. It's for anyone who enjoys stories and wants to think about them on a deeper level.
Absolutely. Okay, so the big takeaway here is that metafiction is about stories being self-aware. It's got this long history from subtle hints to full-blown, we know this is a story moments.
Yeah. And it keeps evolving and changing how we create and experience narratives.
Exactly. So here's something to chew on. Now that you're more aware of metafiction, start paying attention to those moments in books, movies, even just how people tell stories in everyday life.
Oh yeah, good point.
How often do you see that little wink, that self-awareness? It's like you've got this new lens to view stories through, and you might be surprised by what you find.
I love that.
It's all about looking deeper and seeing the magic behind the curtain.